Friends, I understand that you have decided to study environmental science. Well, I congratulate you. Environment is absolutely necessary for us. There was a time when we were not very conscious of our environment because the environment was unpolluted. There was a lot of greenery around us, the air was clean, the water was clean, and we took everything for granted. But now, because of the industries, the pollution levels have increased so much that we have become conscious about the pollution in the environment, and therefore we have started studying it as to what causes the pollution, how to avoid it, and how to live with it. Now, energy is one of the topics that is very closely linked with environment. Because a lot of our environmental pollution comes through the use, or I would say through the wrong use of energy. There was a time about 200 years ago or 300 years ago when the industries were not very well developed and when the sources of energy were also rather meager. At that time, coal was the only non-renewable resource that was available. Petroleum was still not known, and therefore the unlimited use of energy that we see today was not there. But when petroleum was discovered, and because it was underground and because it was inaccessible, people could not really judge how much of it was or how less it was, and they started using it in a very spendthrift manner. And now it appears that we have enough petroleum to last only for the next 20 years. So we have to very seriously start thinking about finding substitutes for the fossil fuels, as these fuels are called. Now, what are the alternatives? Now, all the alternatives except for atomic energy were already available to the mankind, and we were already using them. We still are using them. For instance, when humans evolved, right at the beginning they discovered fire. That was burning wood to make fire, and that was, I think, their first source of energy. Later on, they started domesticating animals, and they used the animal energy. Then a little bit of mechanical invention came about, and people started using wind energy, which drove the windmills, or water energy, which drove the water wheels. Solar energy people were using as soon as they started drying anything. Maybe it was meat that they hunted, that was dried. Fish which they caught, they were dried. Later on, agriculture came in. They started drying their agricultural products. So that was the use of solar energy. So all these alternatives were already there, but they were not so well developed. And now the time has come where we have to seriously think of utilizing these alternatives in a rational manner so that we get the best results by using these alternatives. I can give you an example. Germany, for instance, has enacted a law by which a certain percentage of fossil energy will be replaced every year by bioenergy. And I have seen graphs, projections as to how much bioenergy will be produced by the year 2030, how much of it will be in the form of biogas, how much in the form of biodiesel, how much in the form of wood, charcoal, etc. I feel that we should also make such laws, make such projections, because everybody now knows that the fossil fuels are declining very fast, and especially with two big countries like China and India, industrializing themselves, the rate of consumption will go up tremendously in the next decade or two, and even the projections which today have been made by the experts may even go wrong. So this is now, the time is ripe for us to start thinking about the future sources of energy, and really we should start making plans. We should gear our entire scientific establishment to solving these problems and to making other alternatives available. Now, among the natural or renewable resources of energy that are available to us, the bioenergy is a form of energy which we can store and use whenever we want. Wind energy or solar energy can be used only as long as they are available. You cannot store them. Water energy we can store by building a dam, but that is used primarily for making electricity, and you need huge expenditure and grid system and all that. So a lot of infrastructure has to be developed for utilizing this energy rationally. But as I said, bioenergy, which comes from biomass, can be produced by everybody in his own farm, and he can utilize it according to his own whim. In areas having high rainfall, people collect wood during the dry season and store it in the house. So that is a stored form of energy, and they burn that wood to release energy whenever they want. So the biological energy forms can be stored and utilized at will, and therefore they are very convenient to use. Secondly, these forms of energy can be produced by anybody who has a bit of land. So farmers, foresters, or even fishermen, those who have water bodies, they can produce these forms. And as I said, you can store them and use them at will, and therefore they are very convenient to use. Now, if you compared the forms in which the biological energy is available, we'll see that the same forms of energy as from the fossil fuel can be had from biological fuels also. For instance, if you looked at gaseous forms, we have LPG or natural gas as the fossil fuel forms. On the biological side, we have methane. If you looked at solid forms like coal, we have wood or charcoal. Or if you took liquid forms like petrol or diesel, we can produce biodiesel or alcohol from biological sources. So whatever machinery we today are running by using fossil fuels can be operated by using biological fuels also. There is absolutely no difficulty about it. The only difficulty is the land on which we produce plants, because after all, most of these energy forms, they come from plants, and we have to produce plants in abundance to produce these forms of energy. Methane, from that point of view, is relatively easy to produce because it can be produced from leaves, from starchy material, from sugars, from cellulose, from proteins, fats. In fact, from practically every plant organ, we can produce methane. Some organs will produce more of it, some will be producing less of it, but it is a fuel which is very easy to produce. Next difficult to produce will be alcohol. Alcohol requires either starch or sugar, which are fermented and then distilled to give you pure alcohol. Relatively speaking, cellulose is the most abundantly available organic matter in the world. So starch I would say would come on the second place, because every seed or tuber or rhizome has starch. So starch is the universal storage material which plants use for storing energy for their own use. Fat or oils are relatively rare. They are produced only in some oils. Some seeds store fat and we call them oil seeds. The molecule of fat is very long. The plants require to spend a lot of energy to produce fats or to produce oils, and therefore the oil yield is always much less. A very simple comparison can be made between a grain crop and an oil crop. If wheat or sorghum gives something like 5 tons of grain per hectare, soybean or groundnut or other, say, mustard or sesame will produce only half as much seeds. So this alone tells you why oil seeds are more costly than grain. And secondly, the grain crops are full of starch. Any cereal grain will contain about 90% starch, whereas an oil seed producing crop will contain at the most 50% oil. The rest of it will still be starch. So oil is a relatively rare commodity, and therefore banking on biodiesel is rather risky. You will never get enough of it. On the other hand, if we go for methane, that would be much easier. I had occasion recently to visit Germany, and I found that they are encouraging methane production to a great extent. I was under the impression that methane, that is biogas, is primarily the fuel for the tropical countries, because the bacteria that produce this particular fuel, they come from the intestines of animals, and therefore they are happiest when the temperature is around 37 to 38 degrees. And in Europe, generally it is always much colder than this, and therefore biogas is not so common in Europe as it is in the tropical countries like China or India. But this time in Germany, I found that the government was encouraging biogas production on a very large scale, and they were using green leafy material as the source of biogas. They grow corn and just harvest the entire crop, chop it up and make biogas out of it. Or they told me that they cut the grass every 15 days on the golf courses. So that grass is also fed into biogas plants. Then the cattle population in Germany has dwindled by 25% recently. A large number of farmers still produce fodder. So this, they are encouraged not to feed to animals, but to put into the biogas plants and produce methane. When I visited Germany, it was minus 12 degrees centigrade temperature, and still they were producing biogas. So I asked them how that was possible, and they said simple, they have insulated systems. So we can do the same thing. For instance, I was told that in North India, it is very cold. In winter, the daytime temperature can often be only 10 degrees, and the biogas plants don't function under those conditions, and that's why biogas is not very popular in North India. But we can also adopt the same system. We can insulate our biogas plants, and we can produce biogas even in the height of winter. Now, as far as biogas is concerned, there was a misconception among scientists that because the biogas producing bacteria are found in dung, they always thought that dung was necessary for producing biogas. Now, I, as a biologist, ask myself this question, that if you want any organism to work for you, you have to feed it, and feed it properly. Even a farmer knows that if he wants to get work from his bullocks, he feeds them properly. Only then he can, get work out of them. So similarly, one has to give high energy food to the bacteria if you want them to work for you. And dung does not have much nutritional calorific value, because the animals have already taken away all the nutrition from that whatever they have eaten, and what is undigestible and what has very low nutritional value is thrown out of the body in the form of dung. And therefore I thought that this was wrong to use dung as a source of methane. So I built a small biogas plant, fed sugar to it, and I found that 1 kilogram of sugar, after fermentation at a time of only 24 hours, would give you as much biogas as 40 kilograms of dung after a fermentation time of 40 days. So this was a revolutionary new idea, and we developed this further. Sugar is costly, therefore we started using starch, and we found that a lot of waste starch and waste sugars are available, which today are really going waste. For instance, if you have a banana plantation, then underneath every banana plant there is a rhizome weighing about 10 kilograms, and it is full of starch. And farmers just don't use it at all. All this starch rots in the field. Or farmers generally have last year's grain which is weevil infested, or rain damaged grain which cannot be consumed. Or if you have a fruit orchard, there will always be some fruit which is damaged by birds, or which has a wrong shape, which you cannot send to the market, or which have just fallen on the ground and rotted. So all these overripe, rotten, misshapen or bird damaged fruits, they can go into your biogas plant. Or if you are living in a city, you can get leftover food from a restaurant nearby, or from your own household, or from your neighbor's household, or you can contact the fruit merchant in your neighborhood and get from him the fruit which he cannot sold, because fruit is a perishable item, and if he cannot sell it, it becomes stale, it gets overripe. That can go into your biogas plant. So there are alternatives which were not at all thought were energy sources, can now become our new sources of energy, and we can produce a lot of methane by using all these sources. This, as I said, is a new development. Our institute received an international award called Ashden Award for Sustainable Energy for the year 2006. Now this particular technology, we developed it for household use, and when I started really thinking about it, I thought that this can be scaled up. My idea is that we can have factories, just as we have now sugar factories where farmers deliver their sugar cane, and in a centralized large factory, you make sugar. Similarly, the farmers can deliver their waste agricultural products, as I said, like leaves or rotten fruits or peels of fruits or whatever they cannot utilize. What is generally known as the wet garbage, that can go into this factory. Even from the cities they can collect this wet garbage. They can collect from fruit processing industries the residues of that industry. All that can be converted into methane in a centralized factory that will reduce its price. It will also make it very easy to purify it, because biogenous methane is never very pure. It is always mixed with carbon dioxide and a little bit of hydrogen sulfide. They have to be removed. It's very easy to remove them. The techniques are already available. And we can sell it as pure methane, as fuel. We can use it in internal combustion engines. We can convert it into electricity. We can run our cars on it. We can run water pumps on it. So this is a very clean source of energy. It will not pollute the atmosphere because it will produce only carbon dioxide and water when it burns. There will be no suspended particulate matter as happens with, when you burn coal or when you burn wood, there's a lot of smoke. That smoke are the unburnt particles, and they are pollutants. That never happens with methane. It's a cleanly burning energy and an excellent source of energy. So it's just a 2-year-old subject, and there's a lot which we still haven't understood. For instance, it's quite possible that if we mix 2 or 3 different substrates, we may get better methane production. Similarly, we can develop better strains of bacteria which will give a higher yield of methane. So there's still a lot that needs to be done, and I appeal to the students of environmental studies. There are many fields, even biotechnologists. They can all work together. Chemists can come to there's also a lot of engineering input that is needed. Physicists can put in their thoughts, and we can all pool our scientific resources. Well, there are many other countries which have already made plans, and they have already started working on making biological sources of energy as the practical alternative. Unfortunately, we are still lagging behind, and I therefore appeal that our scientific community, as well as our administrators and politicians, take a decision now to work in this field, plan what we want to achieve, and try to develop the necessary technologies so that in the coming decades we are no longer dependent on fossil fuels, but we can use our own resources and make our own biological energy.